Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is a show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did. So let's get started. Number 5 was once again The Fall Guy, making $4.1 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $80 million and a worldwide total of $158 million. So once again, The Fall Guy proving that word of mouth does help, and it did manage to find its audience, still carrying out and holding strong despite, being the week after Memorial Day weekend. I thought it would probably get the boot out of the top 5 for some of the smaller films like Haikyuu the movie or something, but no, it stuck around for at least one more week in the top 5, bringing its domestic total past the $80 million milestone and well over the $150 million milestone worldwide, which is all impressive when you don't think about the fact that this movie costed $130 million. This film is still struggling, but thanks to its strong legs, strong word of mouth right now, it isn't as big of a disappointment as it was initially. It's still certainly one of the biggest disappointments of the summer, without a doubt. But this does show that if you give a movie some time and let word of mouth build, it could do better than expected. At the end of the day, it just really seemed like the budget was this film's biggest enemy. Like I've said time and time again with this movie, had this costed significantly less, if it had a $50 million or even a $90 million budget, this probably would have been a sleeper hit, if anything. Yeah, the opening wouldn't have been a great start for the summer, but it still would have had a really solid box office run given that budget. But because it has this budget, it's just not where it should be. So yes, once again, while it is doing better than expected, it is still going to end up being a bit of a disappointment. Not as big of a disappointment as what was led to believe with its opening, but a disappointment nonetheless, unfortunately. Number 4 was once again Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, making $8.9 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $140 million and a worldwide total of $337 million. So Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes has now officially doubled that $160 million budget worldwide. If it can keep going, I could see this cracking $350 million probably by the end of this week for sure, and hopefully you can get to that $400 million milestone worldwide. The thing is that, well, yes, it is still bringing in audiences to the theater. It's still certainly the biggest movie of the summer. We're about to head into June, and there's a lot more competition this month than there was last month. So obviously we're going to start seeing this movie slow down a bit, get hurt by more of the stiff competition. So that could hurt its chances, but given how strong it's been doing as of late, it wouldn't surprise me if it inevitably gets there, even if it's outside the top 5. And yeah, still, this movie is climbing up the charts. It's just $6 million away from surpassing War for the Planet of the Apes' domestic total, which is promising, considering this is supposed to be the start of this franchise. I'm sure they weren't hoping for this movie to reach the heights of some of the bigger movies, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and so on and so forth. But the fact that it's about to surpass one of the recent films, is still rather very impressive to see, and I'm sure they're probably going to greenlight this next couple of movies down the road. Apparently they want to make 9 of these, which is interesting to say the least, but I'm sure given how well this movie has done in such a dour summer right now, we'll get those 9 movies for sure. So yeah, not much more else to say really here, which is surprising because once again this is the biggest movie of the summer right now. But yeah, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes still pulling in good numbers, still doing strong. Not much more else to say except good job. Number 3 was once again If, making $10.5 million this weekend, bringing its domestic total to $80 million and its worldwide total to $137 million. So it was a pretty interesting weekend for If, as when the estimates came out on Sunday, it was actually If that took second place, and another movie we'll get to in a moment in third, with a $50,000 difference between the two of them. It was actually a pretty close weekend between the two of them. And while If definitely came short of the estimates, it still had a very good weekend for itself. It only dropped 35% from last weekend, which is great to see. It pushes past the $80 million milestone domestically. It's definitely going to get to $100 million domestically, even with Inside Out 2 just 2 weeks away. That's not going to affect this movie's chances of surpassing that milestone. And worldwide, it's already surpassed its $110 million budget. It's on its way to $150 million worldwide, which is pretty good. And hopefully, it'll continue to have strong legs throughout its theatrical run to get it to the doubling point. It has yet to be released in Japan and China. I think that's not for another 2 weeks. So hopefully, when it releases in those countries, those numbers get boosted from that. And overall, yeah, this movie is performing a lot better than expected. You know, these family movies seem to be really finding their audience. This movie certainly has. It's right now the second biggest movie of the summer, you know, domestically speaking. And yeah, people just seem to be really resonating with this movie. Kids are getting ready to get out of school or just have already gotten out of school, starting summer vacation. Obviously, more families are going to check this out given the free time. And yeah, once again, the big surprise of the summer. I was definitely not expecting this total. So much so that it's now officially the biggest original movie of the year. It surpassed Civil War, The Beekeeper, Challengers, and Argyles. Now that's definitely a big achievement for this movie. Yeah, just a pretty solid weekend despite it coming under what the estimated, you know. This is still a really solid total. Again, it's got 2 more weeks until Inside Out 2. It just has to keep going, keep bringing in the audiences. Even though it's probably not going to affect its chances of 100 million domestically, it's probably going to affect its box office success, you know. But otherwise, yeah, I still think it's got some juice left in the tank for it. People seem to be, once again, really resonating with this movie, really enjoying it. The legs and word of mouth seem to be very strong with this. Yeah, not much more else to say, except, you know, really solid numbers. Number 2 was Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, making $10.7 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $49 million and a worldwide total of $114 million. So yes, this was the movie that was challenging IF this weekend with a $50,000 difference between the two of them, believe it or not. And while yes, it did came over the expectations as well as IF and surpassed the $100 million milestone worldwide, it's just not enough to help this movie out. Unfortunately, it took a big hit this weekend, falling 59% from last weekend, which for a blockbuster, you know, could have been worse. At least it didn't hit the 60s, but man, that's still not a good hold, especially during a dry weekend where there wasn't really anything major new coming out. This movie would have greatly benefited from a strong overperformance or strong holds, but it's just not doing it. It just, like I said last week, it just seems like audiences just didn't really want to go check this movie out. They weren't interested. It may have came out a bit too late, and those who have seen it aren't really encouraging others to go and check it out, unfortunately, and it's causing it to be one of the bigger flops of the summer, because at least with the Fall Guy, you know, at least that made its budget back. It took a while to get there, but it made its back. I'm not sure if this is going to be able to do that. Maybe it gets close, or just barely gets over that, but I have my doubts on this being a success, unfortunately, you know. Maybe had this movie come out sooner after Fury Road, it would have done better, and it seems like it's pulling a bigger audience internationally, and like if it hasn't opened in China yet, so hopefully those numbers help. But again, I'm just not sure if it's going to be enough to give this movie the boost it needs, unfortunately. It's just the budget was just way too high, and the interest was just so small, unfortunately. So yeah, even though it overperformed in the estimates, this movie is still in a bad place. I'm not sure how it's going to salvage that, especially with as we are heading into June with all of the big competition. This movie is definitely going to struggle, unfortunately. And finally, let's end the video off with the number 1 movie of the weekend, which was the Garfield movie, making $14 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $51 million and a worldwide total of $152 million. So as I expected, the film held very well this weekend. It doesn't seem like the B+ cinema score had a big effect on this movie, or as big of an effect as it has on Furiosa, but regardless, yeah, it seems to be performing similar to if it's a new kids movie out, it's a new animated movie out, and families are going to show up and give it the attention it needs right now. And because of that, domestically, it's $10 million away from surpassing the $60 million budget it has. Given how close it is to that milestone, it's definitely going to surpass that by the end of this week, and it doesn't even need to do that this week because it's already surpassed both that and the doubling point worldwide and the $150 million milestone worldwide. Unlike If and Furiosa, this has released in China, and boy, did those numbers really give this the bump it needed. I think this is definitely cracking 200 million worldwide, which would be over the tripling point of this film's initial budget. So yeah, Garfield's in good hands. It didn't even need to have that big of an opening, and word of mouth is helping this movie out to have the type of legs you would expect for a kids movie. Should it have done better? Yes. Would it have been better had it been performing a bit closer to what If is doing right now? Yes. But given how low the numbers were for it on Memorial Day weekend, and the fact that it's been picking up this steam to get the jump over Furiosa right now, is a good sign for this movie. It does seem to be, performing not closely to If, but similarly to If. Both of these family movies do seem to be coexisting. One is not really hurting or detrimenting the other, like I think a lot of people were expecting to. And yeah, Garfield's in a good place right now. I'm not sure if it's going to get to 100 million because it seems a bit far away from that, and Inside Out 2 is in 2 weeks, and I think that's going to hurt this movie's chances more than it's going to hurt If's chances of cracking that milestone. But once again, it's not like it really needs to. Again, the movie's such a hit already. It's not like it's in dire need of surpassing that, although that would be nice to see otherwise. So yeah, just a great weekend for the Garfield movie. It held very well. It's making a ton of money. It's a certified box office success, and it's definitely going to continue to grow for the coming weeks, even with Inside Out 2 in a couple weeks. This movie is in such a good place. I'm not even sure if it's really going to affect its performance overall. So yeah, just once again, like I said a bajillion times talking about this movie, Garfield doing great right now. And those were your top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we got another weekend ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. And this weekend we have 2 new major wide releases. Hopefully both of these can lift us up after the slump we've been seeing for the summer. The first being The Watchers. This is a new horror thriller from newcomer Ishana Night Shyamalan. If that name sounds familiar, it's because that she is the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan, and I think that's going to bring some interest to this movie, seeing what she can bring to the table in terms of horror and thriller. And I do think the premise and how the movie looks has intrigued people. Definitely the mystery angle and why these people are in this closed in capsule, I guess, and why these people specifically. I think there is a lot of interest with this movie. Not as much buzz, but definitely interest and curiosity. I think people are definitely gonna go check this out. I think it's gonna be one of the bigger, quote unquote bigger horror openings. I definitely think the name behind the director and the premise are gonna really bring people out, and the marketing has been alright. I've been seeing some promos and stuff for it here and there. As you can tell, I'm not expecting a huge opening for this because the marketing hasn't been that great, and while there is interest for this movie, there isn't buzz. I'm not seeing a lot of people talking about it. There are people talking about it, but it's nothing like what we saw last year with a lot of the other horror movies. So yeah, while I do think we're gonna see a better opening for a horror movie this year, given the positive I said, it's not going to be anything like major. I still have my gripes with it, but if it does surprise, I wouldn't be opposed to that. So yeah, not expecting much, but not expecting anything terrible. And then there's Bad Boys, Ride or Die. 4th installment of the Bad Boys franchise. I think this is gonna really not save the summer, more or less, but pick us back up to speed. I think we're going to see a bigger opening than we've had for a lot of the summer movies recently, because it is a Bad Boys movie, and that last one especially was so well received, and because it's got a lot of the same crew behind it, I think that's going to, bring some people to the theater. And, once again, it's a Bad Boys movie. Lots of people love and cherish this franchise. They love seeing Martin Lawrence and Will Smith together in these roles as these characters, and they're gonna really love the jokes and the action, and the marketing has been ramping up as of late. It started a bit slow, and we'll discuss that in a few, but I've noticed that they've been really starting to ramp it up. I've been seeing a lot more promos, a lot more ads and tie-ins and stuff for this movie, and I think some people are starting to get a bit more excited for this. I also see a lot of buzz with this movie. I think I do see a lot of people talking about how excited they are to see this. I really think this is going to be the movie to bring us back to speed for the summer. The things holding it back is, I think they definitely waited too long to drop the first trailer for this. I know this was one of the movies that was heavily impacted by the strikes last year, and honestly, it's a miracle they were able to finish this just in time for the summer. But I do think having dropped this trailer a bit earlier would have helped this movie's marketing a bit. It took a while for things to really ramp up for the marketing. And obviously, because it is the summer, it's going to deal with way more competition than the last movie. The last movie came out early in the year, January, and it didn't really face off any competition until Sonic, and then, you know what happened after that. So it didn't really need to worry about anything. This is coming out in the heat of the summer with a lot of these big movies coming out, so it's going to really need to prove itself, really stand out amongst the crowd. But I think it'll be able to do that as an action comedy. So yeah, I'm expecting good things for Bad Boys Ride or Die. I think it's going to do very well, but we'll see how well this movie truly does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied, unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.